thank you all for coming here. This is awesome, and as Dennis said, this is my first time not really speaking as a scientist. I'm speaking as the director of Harbor Branch. And because of that, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself. I don't know, how many of you have seen me speak here before? Probably a few of you. Oh, a lot of you. Okay, so you know who I am. But maybe you don't know this. So,
next slide.
I asked myself, I was a scientist here, and now I'm director of Harbor Branch, and it's how did I get here? And back in the late 80s, early 90s, this is what I was doing. I was kind of a long-haired hippie, and something happened in the intervening years, and I became this. I'm going to guess this version of me would be horrified by this version of me. I did not own a tie until just a few years ago. So that tells you kind of how it is. I do think that back doing this, playing a lot of music on stage, it did get me ready for what I have to do now, which is get in front of audiences and speak. So any stage fright I might have had back, which is a big thing that most people have, I got rid of when I was much younger. And also, looking back at these photos, any of you who are parents or grandparents and have young adult children, don't worry if they look like this. They might grow up and be okay. So give them some freedom. I have a child too, so hopefully I'll do as I say. When I wasn't playing music, I managed to get a Master's of Science and a PhD in biological oceanography from the University of Rhode Island Graduate School of Oceanography, a very good oceanographic school. I learned a real lot when I was there, tried to learn as much as I could. I have expertise in phytoplankton ecology and physiology. I studied biooptics and biophysics. I've studied bioluminescence in the ocean. I study harmful algal blooms. That's what most of you have heard me probably talk about. I was also involved in a lot of instrument development with a commercial company at one point in my career. I've had a number of publications. I've got over $10 million in grant funding for almost every major agency out there. So I'm pretty experienced with what it takes to be a research scientist. So if you're going to lead an organization of research scientists, this is good. Some of my previous positions, I was a research associate during my MS and PhD studies. I went to school part-time. So I was a full-time research technician and did my MS and PhD studies in my spare time, which made it harder, and that's why it took me 7 years between my MS and my PhD, but I did learn a lot more because I was out working every single day. After I graduated and got my PhD, I became a postdoctoral investigator, as many people do. I spent a couple years doing that, and then I accepted a research faculty position at my alma mater at URI. And spent 5 years there in academia. But then I left academia and went to work for Seabird Scientific. I actually worked for one of their subsidiaries called Wet Labs, and did that for about 8 years. And this was an industry job, which is quite different from being in academia. And I think having that job probably helped me out a lot for the position I'm in now. Because when you're in industry, you have a lot more management duties. You do a lot more kind of training to deal with personal conflict and things like that. So I didn't know it back then, but that was kind of leading to where I am today. I left industry and came down here and took a research professor position over 3 years ago. I'm almost approaching my 4th year here. And now I've moved to administration. So we had most of you probably know, Harbor Branch had a leadership change in 2018. And I was asked and accepted an appointment as the interim executive director in March of 2018. And this is how I felt the first few months. The proverbial, I'm drinking through a fire hose. I mean, no matter what you think you're prepared for, you're not prepared to suddenly lead an institute. I'm a trained scientist. I'm not a trained administrator. And a lot of things come at you, and you just have to absorb it as quickly as you can. Under the S note of no good deed goes unpunished, I was then asked and accepted an appointment as to become the permanent executive director of Harbor Branch in July, as Dennis said, in the summer of 2018. I think by that point, I kind of went into my Henry Blake phase, where a lot of documents were put in front of me that I just signed, and we have to sign a lot of documents. I think now I've moved past that, and I kind of know what's put in front of me. But it's been a transition, but I've really enjoyed it to date. So What have I actually been doing since taking the job besides normal day-to-day operations of running Harbor Branch and dealing with personnel and different issues? I have to be one of the public faces of Harbor Branch. I mean, that is part of the job of being a director of an institute. So I have been blitzing public lectures, doing media as much as I can, and outreach activities. This is just a short list of some of the talks I've given and some of the things I've done. I don't say no. If someone asks me to go give a talk, I do, so I can promote Harbor Branch. I think it's the most important thing I can do, or one of the most important things I can do. I cannot tell you how many times I've been out in the community and someone says to me, oh, Harbor Branch, yeah, you're that, the best kept secret on the Treasure Coast, or, in this area. We don't want that. We don't want to be a secret. We want the public to know the great work that the scientists do here. And it's really, really important that I get that message out. It's critical. So if you have a group that wants to have a speaker, ask. I'll probably show up. Maybe that's not a good thing. Now, as well as reaching out to the public and letting the public know what we do, it's really important, as you could probably suspect, that we have really good relationships with our local politicians and our local counties, because this is where funding potentially comes from. This is where trying to advocate for funding at these different levels, you've got to have them know what you do, and you have to work with them closely. I have met at the federal level with Senator Nelson, Representative Mass, Deutsch, Wasserman Schultz, at the time, Representative DeSantis, who's now our governor, met one-on-one with these people and talked to them. On the state, I've talked to Senator Mayfield, Senator Harrell, Representative Grahl, and I've dealt with 4 of the counties around here and talked to their commissioners and their administrators. So I go out of my way to try to make these connections, because it's really important to the future of Harbor Branch that we're well positioned with our political relationships. So again, it's a big part of what I need to do. That's enough about me. That's, gives you a little flavor of what I have to do as director and what anyone that's director of this institute has to do. What's really important is, what do the scientists and the staff and the administrators of this place do? What does Harbor Branch do? If you look at our website, you'll see these kind of headlines that have our pages of different science that's done here. And this kind of captures what we do in a gross level. We do aquaculture and stock enhancement. We do marine ecosystem health research. We do a lot of ocean engineering and technology work. That's what Harbor Branch was basically founded on. We do ocean exploration work. We work with marine mammals, both rescue and science. We do a lot of marine biomedical and biotechnology research. We have the Indian River Lagoon Observatory. Ocean optics is a big part of what we do here with our engineers, ocean dynamics and modeling, and population ecology and behavioral ecology of a lot of different kind of animals. We can dig down even deeper than that. I mean, the breadth of research that's done at this institute, which we're approaching 28, 29 faculty members, is amazing. I mean, this is really important in it's amazing just what we do. So if we dig down a little bit deeper, in the aquaculture group, people work with seaweeds, shellfish, shrimp, and fish. I mean, we run the gambit of everything that you can potentially do with aquaculture. The biomedicine and biotechnology groups are actually working right now on cancer therapies and trying to develop new antibiotics. Really important work for society. The microbial, genomics, and metabolomic groups are working on genetic fingerprinting. They're working on biosynthetic pathways of toxins, various things like this. Again, very important work. Marine ecosystem health is kind of a no-brainer. We know it's important, but doing monitoring of our ecosystems, understanding nutrient pollution, understanding restoration, and helping with restoration that we can do in our environment. Harmful algal bloom dynamics, something that I work on. We look at the causes of harmful algal blooms, but also what are the effects to the ecosystem and to humans. I mean, that's what I think is critically important. We also have a really good coral reef ecology, health, and conservation group here. They look at disease assessments, they map reefs, they're involved in conservation of reefs. Again, it's a big part of Florida. This is really important research. In the ocean engineering and technology groups, there's a lot of instrument development that's done here. Right now, if you happen to see that very large boat that's in our channel, on the back of that is something I'm going to talk about, but that is actually an instrument that was built in cooperation with Raytheon, but for the Navy. So we're developing, large devices, and our engineering group is really good here. Ocean optics and underwater imaging, this is satellite remote sensing. This is how we look at the Earth in total instead of just looking at points. It's the only way we can understand our globe, so remote sensing is very important. And we develop new sensors through this group too. Ocean exploration and technology, we have a NOAA Cooperative Institute here, which leads this work. Ocean dynamics and modeling, we have people that work on fluid dynamics and biophysics. Marine mammal research and conservation, we have faculty who work on epidemiology and health problems in dolphins, turtles, various animals. Most of you have probably seen if there's a dolphin stranding or potentially a manatee stranding or something, you'll see a Harbor Branch faculty member and or staff member that responds to that. You'll see them in the news. So we work with rescue of these animals and just on their general ecology as well and do science on them. There's population dynamics and behavioral ecology on dolphins, whales, sharks, turtles, a lot of different research there. Fisheries ecology and conservation, looking at protected species in the lagoon and in our waters, tracking populations, that's how we understand them, and biogeochemistry. And this is something kind of getting new for Harbor Branch where, as you heard Dennis say, Tracy Mintzer, one of our new faculty members, is going to be talking next week about marine plastics, which is it's kind of like harmful algal blooms. It's one of these growing problems in the ocean. And we work at nutrient cycling, carbon cycles, all these big issues that you have for geological scales. So you're starting to get a sense, we do a lot. And this isn't even everything. I mean, I'm just trying to highlight some of the stuff we do. How do we do this? This is, not everyone realizes how Harbor Branch works. Harbor Branch is what we call a soft money research institute. And what I mean by that is the state doesn't just give us $10 million and says, go do all your research. Great. Our researchers have to go out and find this money. They have to write proposals to the government. They have to write proposals to the state, to our foundation, whoever it is, some kind of granting agency, and convince them that the science we're doing is worth funding. We are not given this by FAU. FAU pays the bills to keep the lights on and keep the maintenance of our buildings, but they do not pay us to do science really directly. Our research is sponsored, and our faculty have to work very hard to get this money, and they should be congratulated for it. And if we look at where our research funding came during the last fiscal year, FY18, we had about $5 million come from federal and state agencies. The federals is NSF, EPA, NOAA, NASA, organizations like that. And that's about half of our total. From industry and other partnerships, we got about $1.5 million. The Harbor Branch Foundation, which is critical to the research we do, gave us almost $2 million to sponsor research here. The Specialty License Plate Program, you've seen the Dolphin Plate. Most of you have probably seen. We have 4 license plates where when you have one of those plates, that money goes to support researchers here. It's a critical path for money for us. Almost $2 million in funds come from those plates. So they're pretty important. I smile when I see them on the back of cars because I know it's actually paying research somewhere here at Harbor Branch. And philanthropy and development, or just trying to get donations from people, we got about $174,000 last year. This is a number of this. I mean, I want to see all these numbers increase, but this is the number that I personally, as director, want to see at least be tenfold of this. With the kind of wealth and the people that we have in this area, we should easily be able to get a couple $1 million a year in donations to here. There are a lot of people around here who really care about the environment or care about blooms or care about, marine mammals. We do something that the public cares about, and they probably should want to support it. We just have not done traditionally a very good job in getting the public to support what we do. But it's getting harder and harder to get this money, and if we don't start getting more here, our research is going to suffer. So this is really one of the important things that I want to emphasize as director of this institute. So where are we going? What is Harbor Branch doing within FAU? John Kelly, the president of FAU, set this goal that FAU is going to become a first tier or a premier research university. And in the first few years of this challenge, and John Kelly's only been here for 5 years, so he's relatively new too, our external research dollars, that federal and state and industry money, it's almost doubled. It went from about $30 million to $60 million. This is pretty good. The goal that President Kelly wants is that FAU as a whole brings in $200 million in external money. Harbor Branch is integral to them reaching this goal. We can double, triple what we bring in just because we're a research institute. How do we grow to achieve this? We invest in our strengths and expand our capabilities. Very obvious. Takes money to make money. Got to put some money in, it'll come back. How are we going to do this investment? This is what John Kelly essentially started, and it was called the FAU Research Pillar Initiative. He wanted to establish and invest, actually put money into, these research pillars, they called it. And these are institutes within FAU. So there's 4 of them. There's going to be a 5th. I can't announce what it's going to be about yet, but I know they're developing it right now. There's the Institute for Sensing and Embedded Network Systems Engineering, or it's called iSense. There's the Institute for Healthy Aging and Lifespan Studies, called iHeal. There's the FAU Brain Institute, or they called it iBrain. I don't think they like that name anymore. And there's the FAU Harbor Branch, us. And you can see these did not exist before. These were created as part of this initiative. They're institutes, just like Harbor Branch is an institute. We're easy. We already existed. So they're kind of following the model of what we are, although we're pretty far ahead of them. All these pillars have directors. iSense is Dr. Jason Hallstrom. iHeal, they're actually looking for a new director right now. The first one they hired was actually interim and just temporary. The Brain Institute is a very good researcher, Dr. Randy Blakely. And of course, I am the director of the Harbor Branch pillar, in quotes, as well. And some people may think, well, you have to wear 2 hats. You have to run the institute and you have to run this pillar. But not really, because Harbor Branch is the pillar. So it's not really 2 jobs. When we call Harbor Branch a pillar, I'll talk about it briefly this way. It was established in 2017, so it's relatively new. This investment is very new. And the purpose of this, with John Kelly's challenge, with Harbor Branch serving as a lead, we want to leverage the diverse ocean, environmental science, and technology expertise across the FAU system, not just what's here. I mean, we do a great work, but there's a lot of other people that do work that's related to what we do. So that we can foster collaborations within FAU and partnerships to enhance the research excellence and benefit society. I mean, our tagline for Harbor Branch is Ocean Science for a Better World. That's what we want to do. How are we going to do it? We do have a strategic plan. Invest. We have to put money into this, or you can't just say we're going to do it. We want to invest in new faculty positions to enhance our research capabilities. You know, we can always get better at what we do. We need to develop interdisciplinary research initiatives and centers to grow the research enterprise, which means just bring in more money, start tackling big problems and trying to get grants, much larger grants to do the work. And then finally, we do want to let the society know what we're doing and let the public know what we're doing. We want to create novel and new education programs, outreach, and development programs. Again, there's that word development. That's philanthropy. To keep on feeding into the pillar, we need to get money coming in through philanthropy as well. So the role of Harbor Branch in creating this pillar initiative is we've almost had 50 years of science and technology here. We're really good at this, and we've been very successful at it. Now we need to give them the leadership within the FAU system to kind of drag in or pull in the other people in FAU that do research that's related to what Harbor Branch does, so we can work together cooperatively and do it. So it's really a leadership role within FAU is the way we look at it. The path forward, and this is just an extension of what I said for that strategic plan, is we need to invest in Harbor Branch's strengths to enhance our capabilities through the Pillar Initiative. And with that, expand our expertise in complementary science through strategic hiring and collaboration within FAU. We need to put this renewed emphasis on community outreach and educational programs. That's a very critical part of what we do. You know, we do it for you, essentially. We really need to increase our corporate research partners and funding through on-campus collaborations. That's why you see that large boat out there right now. That's a cooperative work with Raytheon. So we're starting to head down that road. And, you know, as I just said, increase development and philanthropy activities to enhance the research mission. This is pretty simple. This isn't that hard. The challenge is that with Harbor Branch being the structural backbone of this pillar initiative, Harbor Branch is the pillar, so they're not separate things, but there are a lot of people who we need to pull in to be part of this, beyond just our own faculty here. There are over 70 FAU professors, and there's 28, 29 here. There's more than double that who count themselves as potential members of this pillar that we can draw on. This is good, but it's a lot of people to kind of herd the cats and get them together. The Harbor Branch pillar of the 4 pillars that currently exist is the largest in membership and the broadest in research scope of all the other pillars. The other 3 pillars are pretty narrow in focus. We do a lot. I mean, as broad as the research is at Harbor Branch, it's going to be even broader by bringing in other people that can work with us to enhance what Harbor Branch is. And that is the goal of getting the pillar initiative or the pillar investment. The collaborations and partnerships that we can do with an FAU, this is just a short list, and this is not even complete. We can work with all the other pillars. CTEC is another campus here that works on ocean engineering. We are working with the College of Science, the Center for Environmental Studies, the Wilkes Honors College, the College of Engineering and Computer Science, OME, College of Medicine, College of Nursing, College of Business, College of Arts and Letters, it goes on. It's my job to try to foster the relationships with these other colleges and FAU to make FAU a better place and a more productive place. So how do we grow Harbor Branch with this pillar investment? We can just kind of think about it like this. We know what Harbor Branch is good at. Our faculty know what they're good at. But we kind of have to develop or reimagine the research themes that we work under. So we can develop research themes that are very similar to what I've already talked about, but they include a little bit broader scope of what could include people from other FAU campuses. We can develop these research themes. We want to develop the faculty teams. This is where we look at faculty outside of Harbor Branch within the FAU system to help, and then get theme champions. You know, we want people to lead these groups and bring them together to want to work. And we can look at just some of the different areas of reorganizing how we look at research into aspects of water quality, where we look at nutrient pollution, harmful algal blooms, toxins, human health, pollutants, monitoring efforts, mitigation efforts, management, and policy. We can put that all under water quality. Conservation efforts with marine mammals, seabirds, turtles, sharks, rays, fisheries, seagrass, Everglades, coastal resiliency. We don't do a lot of Everglades work here, but there are people down in Boca who do. So, but it's all part of this conservation effort that we can lead here. Ocean plastics and pollution, ocean engineering, sensor development modeling, biotechnology, defense and energy projects, aquaculture and food safety, food stocks, science, safety, and security, stock enhancement. I mean, you see, these are all things that Harbor Branch does, but they're a little bit broader. The biomedical group, natural products, toxins, metabolomics, human health, ocean exploration, and climate change and biogeochemistry. This is how we kind of have to refashion what we are so that we can include other people into what the research that we do. So under that, I won't talk about the pillar anymore, but that's kind of where we're going. Harbor Branch will still, you know, it exists. It's an institute, but it's going to expand through this pillar investment. So this is a really good thing for us. Under that, with recent activities we've done at the Institute, we've hired 5 with pillar investment money, new faculty. The first to be hired was an electrochemist. This is a joint hire with one of the other pillars, iSense. This is Dr. Jordan Beckler, a biogeochemist. This is Tracy, who's going to talk next week about plastics. He was a joint hire with the Wilkes Honors College down in Jupiter. We hired 2 ocean engineers. The first is, there was a lot about fluid dynamics. He's a joint hire with OME. Dr. Aditya Nayak, I know Adi really well. He was a postdoc in my lab, and he applied for a job at FAU and got it, so I'm really happy he's here. We're really lucky to have him. Another ocean engineer, Dr. Sid Verma. He's more of a computational engineer. He does a lot of modeling, computer modeling. And our most recent hire through the pillar is a developmental biologist and another joint hire with the Wilkes Honors College. And this is Dr. Andia Chavez-Fanega. And you know, it's really good to have this group of people here now because they're expanding what we can do. And because they're joint hires with other campuses or other pillar institutes, they by necessity force that we start to interact more with the whole FAU system. So it's going to make us grow and it's going to start that collaboration. And that's the whole idea of what we're trying to do with the pillar investment. As part of this, we're going to complete our faculty recruitment next year. In FY19, we've already finished our hiring. We're going to do 3 more hires in the next fiscal year, so after this next July. So we'll have 8 new faculty at a minimum here at Harbor Branch, which is great for us. Along with faculty hires, we also have new administrative hires, which are going to help us expand our mission and make us grow. We have just hired a director of development. There's that word again. I'm going to get money, I'm telling you. She is great, Amanda Nickerson. She will start this Monday coming up. We have a new director of outreach and engagement. Most of you that have been to our visitor center probably know Gabby. This was a promotion, so Gabby Barberite has now been promoted up to our director of outreach and engagement. We have a new associate director of media relations. This is Linda Figueredo-Rosavi. Many of you may know Linda if you watch Channel 12. She was the weekend anchor and also one of their investigative reporters. Again, we're really lucky to have got her away from Channel 12, and now, I mean, she knows how to do media and she knows how to produce things, and now she's working for us, which is great. And a new associate director of communication, and this again was a promotion, Lauren Gifford. And as part of the whole activities that we do that are pillar or institute, however we want to look at it, we're continuing a lot of work. We're developing a separate science lecture series, which is not open to the public, unfortunately, but it's more for scientists to talk to each other. So we have a lecture series that brings in external scientists that are either here or down in Boca or one of the other campuses that we can enhance our science knowledge of what's going on. We're developing new scientific and industry partners. We're building faculty participation. That's me going to the other campuses and trying to tell them what we do here and how they can interact with us. We're engaging public stakeholders as much as we can, water managers, policymakers, community leaders, politicians. And this is an important thing to do. And facilitating outreach and community engagement. Giving talks like this, just trying to tell people what we're doing and why what we do is important. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of where we are with our faculty and our hires and how we're starting to grow. Now I'm going to talk about some of our research, and this is probably the more fun stuff to talk about. The first thing I'm going to talk about, and I'm just going to get some highlights. I cannot talk about every single project that goes on here at Harbor Branch. We'd be here for 3 days. But I'm going to talk to you about some things that are coming up in the future and they're going on right now that I think will be important to our funding and just our visibility in the next couple of years. One is something that was developed in my lab, and this is an in-situ holographic camera. It's a second generation device. It's seen here. This was the first generation. And what this does is actually take a holographic image of water as it passes through these 2 windows in here. And I won't get into all the technique and the math and the science behind it. But it gives you, as water flows through, and you can see this is actually water coming, live recording through this device, you can actually, it's a microscope, and you can see all the phytoplankton as they go through in real time and see them in 3D space and reconstruct these volumes to understand what these particles are and how they're moving and how they're going through space. And you can actually start to understand the species of phytoplankton or different zooplankton and things that are in the water this way. As you can imagine, this could be really important for improving harmful algal bloom monitoring. If you remember when the red tide just occurred this last summer, they had to take water samples, they had to fly them over or bring them over to a lab and have them looked at under a microscope so they could find out how much red tide was there or if red tide was there at all. With a device like this, you could simply take it out and tow it behind a boat and see the harmful algae right away and get counts of how many are out there. So this is a much more efficient way of doing something like that. It has many more applications beyond that, but we're currently writing proposals to actually get the government to fund that this device could be used to do a much better job of our monitoring efforts so we can quickly know what's there instead of having to process samples in the lab. Another project that just got funded in technology here is a CubeSat imager for ocean ecology, and this was funded through the Office of Naval Research. And what this is, a CubeSat are these little tiny devices, little tiny satellites. They're about, you can see the hand there. They're that big, some about that big. And this is the next generation of how remote sensing is going to be done of the Earth. The old traditional way is that NASA builds, or ESA, the European Space Agency, $1 billion satellite system that's put on a large rocket and launched into space, and it lasts 3 or 4 years, and then it crashes down. Very expensive. It takes about a decade from conception to launch to get a large satellite system up there. CubeSats are very cheap. They're very small. You can put up many of them at once, and they still last for a couple years up there. And this is the wave of the future. We're going to stop these billion-dollar satellites from going up. We're going to start start building these smaller sensors, and we can put constellations of these around the Earth. As part of this kind of development in technology at NASA and different agencies, we have to start working on the optics of them and how they can image to make them useful. So they don't have to, they're never going to be what the billion-dollar satellite system is, but they can come close. So everything we can do to improve their imaging capabilities of the Earth is going to make them a much better tool than they currently are. So this grant was to actually improve and make an imaging system for these CubeSats. And the goal of this project is develop and launch these imaging systems on a constellation of these around the Earth to measure ocean ecology parameters for the US Navy. The US Navy is interested in how the Earth changes on a global scale because they have to operate all over the world's oceans. So they need to understand what's going out there as much as scientists do. So they fund work like this. And now that work's being done here, which could be critical to our future and the future of science. Another technology development project that's going on is HAWKS. This is a hybrid aerial underwater robotics system. And what this system is trying to do is create a scalable, adaptable sensing and maintenance for aquaculture fish farms. Currently, when you have these aquaculture ponds out there, a human being has to go out and, it's a crop essentially, and you have to make sure it's okay, make sure there's enough oxygen in the water, they have enough feed, all these things. Well, instead of having to have humans go out there and do this, we can do this robotically. We can have autonomous surface vehicles, we can actually have aerial vehicles which can dip down sensors and actually tell someone back at the farm what's going on in all the ponds and quickly do it. You can imagine that this kind of system could be used for a lot of different things. Specifically, again, I'll go to an easy one, harmful algal bloom monitoring. Instead of having to get in a boat and go investigate what's going on, well, we can send an autonomous vehicle to go get a sample or to go test that water to see what it's like out there. So again, this is kind of the future of science and using drones and using autonomous vehicles in replace of having to have people out there. And people are very expensive. Another technology development that's currently going on is another defense-related, it's another Office of Naval Research funded project, is trying to develop or improve our acoustic sensing with underwater inflatable passive sonar arrays. And the key word here is inflatable. A lot of these autonomous vehicles are small. They have to run on batteries and they have a very limited payload in a very limited space. And when you're dealing with acoustics, these are normally large arrays and they need a good distance to actually work right. And how do we get something that's very large and a delivery vehicle that's very small? Well, one of our scientists came up with the idea, why don't we just make an inflatable version of it? So it can be stored all compressed, put in the vehicle goes and lays it out in the ocean, and then it expands out. Great idea, very simple. The Navy funded it. So this work is going on right now. And again, this could be used for a lot of different applications, but acoustics is definitely one of them. This one's pretty interesting. This was developed from previous research and unrelated to what the funding eventually ended up being. And they used it to develop a pretty unique funding opportunity through DARPA, which if no one here knows, is the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. This is like, they do pretty odd work at times. This is, the things they fund are interesting and half of them never turn out to be anything. but then some of them turn out to be some of the biggest science advances that are ever made. Usually they have some kind of military application, of course, because it's defense related. So we have scientists here who study large fish. They use technology like a wave glider. This is an autonomous vehicle that tows an acoustic array on it, which can record the vocalizations of these fish. And we can use that through, we record them as we're sending this over where they are. They can look at the signal, they can actually hear the different vocalizations of different fish, and from that they can tell who's there, how many of these fish are there, what they might be signaling about when they're talking, and then learn more about the ecology of this fish. Well, one of the characteristics of particularly groupers, these fish are found, they're very territorial, they're found to be aggressive and vocal towards non-native threats, things they don't like divers. You go diving around a grouper, it's gonna bark, it makes noise. They're kind of like dogs. Well, these guys very cleverly thought about this and pitched to DARPA that the behavior and these unique vocalizations that these fish make could be used as a natural detection and warning system against foreign threats. In other words, these are literally guard dogs. They're sitting out there in the ocean, and if some big thing comes into their area, they're all going to start making a lot of noise. And at that point, we can send somebody out there, turn on the porch light, and go see what's going on, essentially. So, you know, you would never think this, and this is the kind of thing that DARPA funds. So this is your tax dollars at work, but this could turn out to actually, you know, we got to use every method we can to, you know, protect our coastlines. So these animals are out there, and they do this. And that project just started. In biomedical research, we've been doing it for a long time, but it goes on, and it's pretty critical work to society. Harbor Branch has built a really extensive library of unique organisms from coral reefs and benthic environments in the ocean. We all know that rainforests are known as for drug development. That's where you get natural products and you develop drugs from. Well, these other environments like coral reefs are the same way. We call them the rainforests of the sea. And they're used in natural product discovery efforts. So they're collected, they used to be collected by the submarine that Harbor Branch had, the Johnson Sea Link. Now we use more modern, smaller ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, to do it. They go down and take samples of different sponges and corals and animals, and all these diverse organisms have very diverse chemistry. And it's this chemistry that's important. This is where these drugs and new compounds can come from, or these molecules that these animals make. They take these animals and they can extract the different chemicals out of them. They can look at the characteristics of the chemicals. They can actually isolate some of the different compounds and then test them against, for instance, cancer cells. Then they find out, okay, what does it do? Does it selectively kill the cancer cells? Does it make them less metastatic? Do they grow slower? Does it lower their resistance to chemotherapy? You can start to see, well, maybe there might be many, many things they can be used for, but this is how drug discovery is done. And you could do it for cancer cells, or this might be something that you use as a natural antibiotic. This is how you have to develop new antibiotics and new therapies. Active research is currently going on here for therapeutic compounds to treat pancreatic cancer, triple-negative breast cancer, lung and colon cancer. That's going on here right now. The Natural Products Library has over 30,000 samples, and it's being tested broadly at Harbor Branch and with some of our collaborators. And they're working on drug chemicals or compounds for drug-resistant bacteria, MRSA. This is you can get a secondary infection when you go into a hospital. Does not get treated by standard antibiotics. Having a new drug that can actually get rid of a MRSA infection would be pretty important to have. Malaria, latent tuberculosis becoming more of a problem, especially in developing countries again, and cancer like pancreatic cancer, which is a horrible cancer. It's almost always fatal. We need treatment options for it. But that's all going on, and it's great. Now, the one thing that's near and dear to my heart is we're also doing a lot of harmful algal bloom research now. The reason for this, and I've showed this slide numerous times, excuse me if you've seen it many times here, but worldwide, harmful algal blooms are increasing not only where we see them around the world, but in the type of blooms we're seeing, what algae is there, the frequency that they occur there, the duration that they last, and the severity. just, how toxic they are, how, what concentration they're there. Pretty much, it's just getting bad. And if we look at reported harmful algal bloom occurrences just in the United States, and this is going on worldwide, this is 1972, and the symbols represent different kind of harmful algae and different blooms that have different effects. And you can see in 72, well, there was stuff going on, but it wasn't a crisis. This is what's going on now. There are a lot more things going on, and look at the circle down here. We have almost everything on this list going on in our waters right now. Florida is one of the most harmful algal bloom impacted states in the US. I would say it is. There might be a case for a state in New England, but we have the most variety, and we're making the most national news right now, unfortunately, for what's going on in our state. So this is critical research. And the kind of research that we're doing here, we're working on the ecological drivers, looking at how nutrients drive them, how light, how temperature affects them. We're working on the ecological effects, what happens when we have them. Are they causing hypoxia, anoxia, that's low oxygen in the water? What toxins are they making? How are those toxins getting into the food chain? How is it affecting human health? These are very important. Working on monitoring, we have the Indian Lagoon Observatory. We have people here working on modeling, trying to understand, you gotta put all this science together to understand how these algal blooms are being driven, and if you're right, and trying to understand it. And where we wanna get, finally, is to start working with policymakers to come up with solutions for how we're gonna deal with this. So we're trying to lead the charge in this right now. What we have done recently, and this is pretty important, and I thought this was a very important thing to do, is we established the Florida Center for Coastal and Human Health. And this started in August of 2018 with a very generous grant from the Harbor Branch Oceanographic Institute Foundation. And what we want to do here is use the Harbor Branch and FAU expertise in this, not just people here, but people across the FAU system, and strategic partners that we can get that also do this kind of research or need to know about it, so that we can really start to understand the Florida harmful algal bloom crisis. And we are in a crisis right now. We need to work together, and our resources are so limited, we can't afford to be duplicating effort. We need to collaborate, we need to work together. If we can start to understand it, we can start to understand how it's affecting all of you. How is it affecting the population that's exposed to this, which is critical to know because we don't know right now. And eventually, hopefully get to that policy and solution area where we have a healthy environment and population, which is the goal we want. What have we been doing with the Florida Center? I have been going out as much as I can to recruit stakeholders and strategic partners, and I've currently talked to almost everybody up here, and they're all signing memorandum of understandings to work directly with Harbor Branch to work together on this under the center so that we can do a good job with this. This involves the counties, the CDC, ORCA, different universities, Martin Health, FWC. I mean, we're trying to bring everybody together so that we can really understand this and share our expertise. But we're also conducting research right now. So you might have seen various articles published about what we do. We're working out in Lake Okeechobee. We're looking at one study with FIT to look at how toxins are getting into dolphins as a sentinel species for potential human impacts, looking at nutrients and how they're affecting the blooms. We have the observatory. One thing that Adam Schaefer is working on here with some of our nursing people is we're actually starting to test people for the amount of toxin in them directly. And I think this is the only effort going on in the state. While these blooms are going on and people are recreationally or occupationally exposed to them, we need to actually start finding out how much toxins people are being exposed to. I mean, this is really important. So we've been going out and collecting nasal, urine, and blood samples from the population that's exposed to these blooms so we can start to understand what the risks really are. I get asked this all the time. What can you do to help Harbor Branch or to help yourself? Don't forget about this problem during the off season. We're in the off season right now. Harmful algae generally don't like colder temperatures. So when it finally comes winter, and winter in quotes, it's cool enough that most of the blooms kind of damp down and they go away. They're gonna come back. When summer starts, they're gonna start growing again. It's just the way it is. Don't forget about this. Don't let up, because this problem's not going away. Pressure your representatives at the state and federal level to support funding and research on this to develop solutions so that we can stop this crisis. I mean, be relentless. I am. When I talk to them, I don't give up. Educate yourself. Know what's out there and know what your risks are. You know, is it safe to eat the fish? Is it safe to go in the water? Is it safe to go down by the beach? Can you breathe when you're there? Don't be scared of it. Just educate yourself about what your risks are. It's really important. And finally, research is expensive. I will not lie. I will beg for money. If you have the resources or you know someone that has the resources, tell them to come talk to me. I really need development philanthropy. I'm going to beg. I beg on the streets. We started one way to get money. We were really kind of desperate for medical supplies when we were doing the human testing. FAU has what's called Springboard, which is like a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter campaign, where you literally just put a thing up and say, give us money, please. We were pretty successful. We raised over $30,000 with the help of 4Ocean in one campaign, and I think $4,000 or $5,000 just getting medical supplies so we could sample people. And this was a direct appeal where we're just asking for like 20 bucks from people. You know, it adds up over time. But this is a big deal, and I'm not going to let up. The more money we can get, the more research we can do. So moving a little bit away from harmful algal blooms, this is another part of our strategic plan to grow is we want to start moving into classified research, defense-related research with corporate and government partners here. Now, we've already kind of started this. We currently have work going on with all these groups right now. Harbor Branch is in the process of becoming what's called a cleared facility again, which means we can actually do classified research on campus and hold classified materials. So we have to have security clearances, you know, secure areas and all that. But once we have that, it allows us to do a higher level of research. And a lot of defense research has very large budgets. So it's one way of really expanding the kind of external dollars you can bring into the university is through doing classified research. Plus it benefits all of us. It's defense research. Just talking about one of these. So we have several things that we want to do, but I'll talk about Raytheon just because the boat's out there right now. The US Navy awarded Raytheon a $28 million contract to develop what's called a variable depth sonar system. This is for anti-submarine warfare in our new littoral combat ships that were just developed. Harbor Branch is building this VDS deployment system. We already built it, essentially. It's out there being tested right now. And we're conducting the full system testing with Raytheon and the Navy. Navy personnel are here right now helping do this. What this is these variable depth sonar systems are used in anti-submarine warfare at ASW. And you can see this is a littoral combat ship. It's towing a sonar that pings out to try to find an enemy submarine. And then you have another device out here which actually listens to the sonar that's out there. Again, it's a really long device. Acoustics take long distance to work. And this is what they currently had. This new system called the DART, and it means dual array transmitter system. It replaces this current system of separate transmit and receive acoustics into a single integrated, rapidly deployed system. So they don't have to put out two things. And if you've ever tried to put stuff behind your boat or you're a boater, once you start putting out multiple lines, they tend to tangle. And it's not good. And that's really not good if you're trying to do submarine hunting. So having it in a single system is really important. And it can be deployed at high speed. So the ship could be doing 30 knots and just drop this thing over where they're going. As you would expect, doing this kind of work, there are classified elements involved with this. It's defense research. So this is why, one of the reasons why we're now becoming a cleared facility, to handle some of the classified elements of this. We are in the final stages of this. And a matter of fact, in December 4th, this came out. The Navy actually bought, when you build something for the Navy, they have to sign off on it. They come, they look at it, they see how you tested it, and they want to see if you did a good job. The Navy bought it. So they came here, they're here at Harbor Branch right here, buying this system right there. And if you look at that boat in the channel on the way out, you'll actually see this sitting on the back of that large vessel that's out there. So the Navy bought it, and now we're in the process of testing it. We think in the next year, we're probably going to have, well, we know pretty certain we're going to have more contracts with them to keep on going with this system and new designs of this system. So that's some of our science. I want to talk a little bit about some of the other aspects of what we do, and this is our community outreach and education, which is also important as part of our growth as the pillar or as the institute. The Harbor Branch Visitor Center is continuing to be updated and enhanced, and I don't know if anyone has been there recently, but I really urge you to go. It's really getting nice. There's a lot of new aquariums. A lot of the displays are being updated. We're going to have one up there for our new Center for Coastal and Human Health, which will tell you what's going on. I really suggest you're doing it, and I think Gabby, as our new director, is really helping to improve and facilitate this communication of what Harbor Branch does to the public, and it's really important. But if you have kids or grandkids, take them to the visitor center. It's well worth it right now. We're also doing education and community engagement. Harbor Branch has a new graduate degree program, started 2 years ago. We have our second class has now started. It's a marine science and oceanography graduate degree program, which is actually comes out of here now. We grant degrees. I have increased an emphasis on educational outreach, K through 12, and other activities. I want to support this as much as I can. I think it's important for education to the public. We have a citizen science project. We have the charter school, the MOAA, the Marine and Oceanographic Academy on campus. We have a new thing they've started with high school students, an ocean science art contest. We currently have Semester by the Sea. There might even be a few Semester by the Sea students in here right now going on. But we need to keep on expanding this, what we can do with our K through 12 education, because that's the generation we need to reach. That recruits, makes new scientists into our system. We also do a lot of science and community engagement. We have the Pillar Seminar Series, as I talked about. We obviously have the Ocean Science Lecture Series. You're sitting here now. We have Marine Science Fridays, which are given in the Visitor Center. You can also publicly see that. We have the Harbor Branch Speakers Bureau. This is where if you have an organization that wants to have a speaker like me come and talk, you can contact them and see if you can get them out there. We participate in the IRL Science Festival. We're trying to do a lot to get our education out there with our science of what we do. We do external science engagement, and this is important to the national and international reputation of Harbor Branch. And we do this by hosting conferences to bring external scientists to Harbor Branch to see our facility and to interact with our scientists. 2 years in a row, I hosted the NASA PACE Science Team annual meeting here. PACE is actually one of these big satellite systems that's going to go up. It's one of these billion-dollar systems that's going up. We just had the RAD LIDAR conferences for recent advances in LIDAR. The Indian River Lagoon Symposium is an annual yearly event. It's been going on for a long time, run by Dennis, coming up in February. But these are all great things because this shows other scientists in both the state and the national and international level what Harbor Branch can do, and it helps our reputation. The philanthropy and development, again, we're committed to doing this. We have gotten donations from all these groups recently. 4Ocean helped us with our harmful algal bloom efforts. Disney has, all these, SeaWorld Conservation Fund. We've done some of our own. So slowly but surely, we will build this, and we will get more philanthropy and development at Harbor Branch. The last two things I'm going to talk about are another way we can get money here, and this can turn out to be big money, and that's through federal appropriations. Of course, the government's closed now, so who knows what's going to happen. But in theory, it's a good thing. So we got really lucky this year. We got through Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, 2 appropriations approved, which is pretty good, just for Harbor Branch. The first is a USDA FY19 appropriation. It's a collaborative research to support domestic aquaculture development. And this is really important. I think it's somewhere, someone can correct me if I'm wrong from the aquaculture group, but 50% of the seafood you eat right now comes from aquaculture. It's really important. And the US is behind other countries right now. We should be leading this effort, and we're not. So we need to start investing in that science and our capabilities in aquaculture. It's how we're going to feed ourselves if we like seafood. This appropriation was for $2 million annually, so it's a reoccurring investment that we'll get Half to the USDA and half that comes straight to Harbor Branch, so it's a collaborative effort between the USDA and Harbor Branch, to advance science for the sustainable domestic supply of marine warm water fish and sea star. You know, and this is obviously to support advancement of aquaculture production in the US. As I said, we need to do this. It's important to the country, not just Harbor Branch. This got out of both the House and the Senate. It is sitting in one of the minibus bills for the president to sign. Who knows if it'll get signed. This one, luckily, did already get signed. So it is actually through. The money is encumbered. One minibus got signed by the president, and it was for the defense agency and NIH. This appropriation was actually in there. So this got signed, and this money is available to us right now. This was from the Office of Naval Research. Again, it's an FY19 appropriation for persistent maritime surveillance using non-acoustic detection. This is $15 million funding request that's out there. And it's to provide development, prototyping, research, and commercial transition for novel, non-acoustic detection, tracking, localization, and identification capabilities and sensors. This is what we do here. We can develop these sensors. We're doing it with Raytheon in some aspects. And we have engineers here who can do this. And it will be used for various ASW and port security, things like that in the United States. Of this $15 million, we could see up to 80% of it. I'll be happy if we get 50% of it. But $7 million over a few years is a lot of money for this place. This will transform Harbor Branch as far as our engineering capabilities. We'll bring on a lot of staff to finish up this work. But as I said, this has actually been approved, and right now we're in the process of we're going to get this money. So this is going to be a great thing for Harbor Branch. So that was pretty much my last slide on science. I've got to thank a lot of people. I owe a lot of thanks to the Harbor Branch administrative and support staff. I couldn't do my job without our admin people and the support staff here. And the support staff make everything else possible. But my job is so much easier because I have such great administration people, and they really, so many thanks to them. Obviously, the Harbor Branch faculty and research staff, they are the heart of this place. They are Harbor Branch. Our faculty and our research technicians, our students, our scientists that are here, without them, this place doesn't exist. And I appreciate them so much for what they do. The FAU executive leadership, to have some confidence in me to run Harbor Branch. I've had a very good relationship with them as well. The Harbor Branch Foundation, they're critical to supporting our mission. So I owe them a lot of thanks. And all of you, if you support Harbor Branch, and you are just by being here, you're helping us out. So I thank all of you. And with that, I will take your questions.